So I would just like to ask everybody who is participating to turn on your cameras at all times. And if you're not participating, feel free to turn off your camera. And also, if you're not participating, feel free to just send messages through the chat. That's perfect. And just again, emphasizing again, if you're participating, please keep your camera on at all times. Would just like to start off by saying Zoomers to Boomers is supposed to be a civil and a safe space for people to talk about controversial topics that would otherwise end up in heated debate outside. I would just like to remind everybody, try not to take things personal and try not to villainize the other side or misconstrue or misinterpret what the other side is saying. We're all here as an exchange for ideas, and I'm actually really excited for this topic, so hopefully it turns out well. I would just like to, for everyone to just introduce themselves. Religious affiliation and religious history. So not.
What did you say? I didn't quite hear you.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, could you give your name, age, your country, your religious affiliation? So like what religion do you subscribe to or not? And your religious history. Obviously, if you're comfortable with it. If you're not comfortable with it, it's perfectly okay. Nadia, could you start?
Hi, my name's Nadia. I'm in the US right now. I was raised as an Orthodox Christian, but right now I'm a little bit of everything. I'm Christian. I have a little bit of Hindu religion incorporated into my life, Buddhism, and Wicca.
Adisa, can you go next?
Yeah, my name is Adisa, and I'm in American Muslim convert. I'm 50, but I converted at like 20. I think. Did I leave something out? I don't know what else was on the list.
No, I think that was everything. Susan?
Me?
No, yeah, you. Okay.
Okay. You can call me Sue if it helps. Yeah, so I am living in America. I am in Denver. And my religious history was kind of on and off because I was an Army brat. We traveled around a lot. And my mother would usually find a church. My father never went. Right now, I belong to a Presbyterian church.
Thank you for that, Susan. Curran, can you go?
My name is Curran. I currently live in America. My, I guess, religious orientation is just, well, I don't really have one. I guess sort of agnostic, if you want to put a label for it, but I don't really thoroughly believe in any religion, so yeah.
Jessie Kaufman.
Hi, my name's Jessie. So currently I'm living in Pomona, New York, which is a suburb outside of New York City. We just relocated here from Brooklyn, New York. I'm currently a member of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, which is a sect of Hasidic Judaism. I grew up in the Reform movement in Judaism. I've been, I guess, within this for about 14 or 15 years now. And yeah, I think that's right?
That is good. Thank you for that, Jessie. Bo?
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Bo. I'm in the United States, in Southern California. I was raised, my immediate family was agnostic, and I would still identify that way today. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Bo. Kimmy?
Okay, hi. Hi, I'm Kimmy. Pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm from Southern California as well, in San Diego. And I grew up in the Catholic/Christian church. My mom was Catholic, my dad was Christian. So I did attend both. And my dad had grown up Catholic as well, so I was very familiar with the religion. And until recently, I had identified as that religion. I am now agnostic.
Thank you, Kimmy. Bryn?
Hi, I'm Bryn. I'm here in the United States in Portland, Oregon, and I identify, or my faith history has always been, I think, Catholic. I grew up very, very Catholic. I have very Catholic parents, and went to like kindergarten all through high school in a Catholic school.
Thank you, Bryn. Jessie?
So I'm Jessie, he, him. I live in Portland in US. I am 35, and I would say right now I don't practice religion. I would say, if anything, I'm more agnostic, but my history, I grew up in Pentecostal church in the east side of San Jose, and I was born and raised in that religion, so I grew up in the choir. I was a musician, so I grew up playing like gospel music, shout music. I went to seminary school. I became a evangelical pastor, and traveled, did missions, did all that kind of stuff to like India and all that. Decided to take up cooking later on in life, and I kind of departed from religion, and I never got that bond back. And so now I'm at a place in my mid-30s where I am definitely not against anything. I have my own phases, but I'm more open to listening to other points of view.
Thank you for that, Jessie. So the first question would be, do you feel as though religious freedom is infringed upon?
Yeah, so I guess I'll go. Like, it is, when I looked at the question, are like religious freedoms being infringed upon, it was like, I applied it to myself, obviously, at first. And so I just kind of had to like break that up and see like who would be encroaching upon my, my beliefs, kind of a thing. And breaking it down to like my family, the government, whether it's, I feel like sometimes I had to go through this phase, and sometimes I feel like other religions are encroaching on myself. And I used to be one of those people. So like for me, I feel like there's the ways that my views on life are being infringed upon is mainly through like more systematic things. Like I try not to like consume animals, kind of a thing. So like it being subsidized by like the government is like kind of like a big kick in my face, but I choose to be part of this. So I guess the question, I don't really feel like, besides like the big systematic stuff, but I can't really change it like right away.
I feel to a certain extent that certain religions are infringed upon, and the reason I believe this is because our government, meaning the United States government, is based on a very Judeo-Christian, like very traditional Christian view. So I believe that a lot of people still have the notion that because our government was written on kind of based off of biblical beliefs, that there should be some sort of superiority to that religion. However, I don't think just because people who wrote rules like 400 years ago should kind of have a say over our religious beliefs. So
I think that yes and no, meaning like not in the ways that it could, right, compared to other countries. So for instance, like I was born and raised in a Christian church. I converted to Islam right before my 21st birthday, and like nobody came and dragged me and like beat the hell out of me under a light and asked me why I was doing it, right? So I mean, like nothing's ever happened. And if I decided to convert to Christianity tomorrow, become a warlock, it wouldn't happen, right? So like that's not, I think like while that's not happening, that's an incredibly low bar, right? If you just think about human rights, okay? But right? As a Muslim, you know what I'm saying? When I'm wearing my skull cap or when I'm wearing things that more definitively identify me as a Muslim, yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, it's not as much systematic as sociological.
Well, I think the United States gets involved in a lot of wars on one side or another of some
And I
religion.
guarantee you, if I wore my kufi skull cap, I would get snatched. You know what I'm saying? I would get, you know, pulled aside and stuff like that. And that's happened to me before. Like that, I was flying after 9/11, after lecturing at Harvard. And the dude was trying to make me miss my flight, trying to scan my shoes, my jacket, my whatever. And I was like, look, dude, unless you think Harvard is harboring Al-Qaeda, you need to get out of my way and get my ticket. And he did. But like that was after like almost half hour of unnecessary screening. So I mean, I felt it.
Yeah, I think that was one of to go back to the question, my really simple answer for this is yes. But I personally don't feel like I can walk throughout the day without being identified as a specific religion. So that's kind of a privilege that I know I hold. And the reason why it's a privilege is because I grew up, I was in first grade. I'm 26 right now, but I was in first grade when 9/11 happened. And from then I know that I have lived through and experienced what the effect of the war on terror has happened, specifically with Islam. So I think for me, when we answer this question, the first thing I thought of was, well, whose rights are infringed upon with religion? It's not, I don't believe it's me. I think Kimmy, said a lot about, the Judeo-Christian kind of like emphasis on today's politics or whatever. And I do think, I do make an argument that it is like the political effect of what is going on, like how politics influence religion, that's how I feel like rights are infringed upon in that sort of way. And I think, again, the war on terror is probably the most prominent to me. It's the most accurate, but I do believe that it's just any type of religion that falls outside, that's identifiable in a way, outside of just walking down the street in a sense.
Susan, you wanted to say something earlier?
I was just saying that I think the United States gets involved in a lot of wars in other countries that have religious overtones. So one side or the other of any particular conflict is being actively suppressed by our country.
I think here in New York, maybe I might have a different perspective versus when maybe I used to live in the South. So here in New York, in Pomona and Rockland County, and in Brooklyn and New York City and in Manhattan, there is a large community of Orthodox Jews. And so I'm an attorney, and I practice real estate litigation and real estate transactions all over the 5 boroughs and in lower Hudson Valley. And I can be in a courtroom where I feel like I'm getting a fair shake and a fair deal from someone, where maybe a number of years ago you would have walked in, I wear a yarmulke, I wear a beard, pretty much I wear my religion on my sleeve. So, maybe you would have been definitely some sort of profiled or had stereotypes against you, in a courtroom or in some sort of transaction. But now the people, it feels like, just as I don't feel any discrimination in that manner. But you do have places like in the South that, say the town hall of whatever city wants to put up a Christmas tree. Okay, that's fine in my manner, but I feel like we should get the same right, the equal protection, to put up a menorah. I'm not making you believe in it, but there's one or two ways to go from it the way I see it under the law. Either you allow everyone, and if a Buddhist and a Hindu and any other person wants to come and put up their thing next to my menorah, next to your Christmas tree, I have no issue with that. But if you exclude me, then you have to exclude everyone else. There's only one or two ways. So that's so my answer a little bit yes and no.
I did have one thing I wanted to add, and this is really short. It's just that As an American Muslim, I know a lot of Muslims who have been visited by the FBI. Right? Some of them are white, were born here, have nothing to do with nothing, and they've had knocks at their door. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, who you with? Blah blah. Like, you know, I mean, before Corona, I wasn't going to no masjids because I didn't want my picture taken with anybody who might be being surveilled. And you don't know, right? Because someone goes to Mecca, they visit Yemen to study, they go to Morocco to study. They're on a list, man. They're getting followed. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, I was like, yo, I'm not going to Juma. Straight up, I ain't been to Juma in forever. I almost never go to Juma because I'm not having my picture taken in next to somebody and then you're getting snatched. People are visiting your house. I'm not having it. And that is active and been active since 9/11, for sure.
That's actually very scary. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of the answers that we're getting was just like a lot of yes and no's, and it seems like a lot of people agreed on that. So that's nice. We do have somebody that just joined right now, Aaron. Would you like to introduce yourself with your religious affiliation and your religious history, as well as your age?
Thank you. My name is Erin Osoy. I'm 14. I'm personally an atheist. I grew up in a Muslim household, although we were never very religious. But so yeah, I am personally an atheist.
Thank you, Erin. So I guess the next question I'm interested in hearing all your responses would be, should children be made to practice religion? And if Haley and Curran could give the first couple of responses.
I mean, I don't necessarily think that it should be mandatory. Like, if they're interested, sure, I think that that's like, you know, fine if they want to pursue, like, you know, learning more about their religion and that sort of thing. However, I feel like to make it mandatory is sort of putting a bit of pressure on children to be like, okay, well, now I guess I sort of have to believe in this sort of thing. And it sort of, I mean, I've never experienced it before, but it seems like it would be a little bit stressful because then there would be like that, that feeling that you sort of have to stick with it, I guess, you know?
And I guess to like refine the question a bit more, I don't necessarily mean should religion be forced upon kids. I mean, if a parent is Muslim, should they make their kids practice the Muslim faith alongside them? Or if the parents are Christian, should they be made to practice the Christian faith alongside their parents?
I'll go. So unlike Curran, I did experience this. Both of my parents were very like devout Catholics. And so kind of what Curran was saying was, I don't know exactly when like a turning point for me happened, maybe somewhere like my freshman, sophomore year in high school, because I'm 21 now, I'm a senior in college. But it was just kind of like do I actually believe in this? Like, because I'd just been going through the motions for, at that point, 14, 15 years. And that's all I really knew. And I don't think there was really any like resentment about it because like I said, like, I don't really know where I like stand with my like spirituality or anything. I definitely feel like I have just those like fundamental Catholic roots, but not that I necessarily believe that, but I can understand where they're coming from. But to answer the question that whether children should be made, I feel like it's just such a complicated answer because I would say yes, no, but because the parents, like, they're only acting most likely in like their best intentions. It's not like they're making them go through their own religion, their own beliefs for necessarily selfish reasons. But I definitely feel like there should be less of a stigma of like, you have to be here and you have to listen, and more of like, just have that conversation with the child or children about, this is what we personally believe in, either the mom or, because like there's like some family, like some people are saying like they have two different affiliations with the parents. And so I just think as long as there's like open communication line for the children to feel like they could step back and look at it in a different way, or explore different religious avenues. That should be more common and more of the, not correct stigma, but more of like a open one.
As a Muslim, I have 2 adult kids and 1 like preteen. And I always raise them to be open to whatever, you know what I mean? Like, you know, we practice like fundamental Islamic things in the household. And when I say that, I mean, I didn't make everybody pray when I prayed. I didn't make everybody go to the masjid when I went to the masjid. But sometimes I took my kids, sometimes I didn't. And I decided early on that I was not really going to be like super dogmatic with my kids, because I noticed that when most of the children of American converts of Islam, their kids rebel. As soon as they're old enough to hit college, they're gone. They don't want to practice the religion anymore. And that can also have a racial and cultural element to it too. Like sometimes, like I noticed, like if families came from overseas, they were super rigid, you know what I mean? And the kids just felt oppressed. So as soon as they went to college or whatever, they moved out, they did bounce or became an atheist or whatever. But then, so like with me, I was just open because I converted to Islam. Most of my family is Catholic and Protestant. So, you know, it wasn't like butting heads or whatever. I just practiced different. And, you know, so there were Bibles, Qurans, Torahs, everything in my house. I study religious history, you know, and so Buddhism, you know what I mean? I would read different stuff to my daughters from Buddhism and whatever, and I never cared, and I don't care now. I mean, to me, like that they're good citizens, good human beings, and that they acknowledge other people, that is way more important to me than the actual religion that they claim, because I know lots of people who are Muslim that are hella shady. They'll rob you of money and be stupid. And, you know, there's all kinds of emotional abuse and spiritual abuse that happens inside the Islamic community, just like the Catholics or anywhere else. So like general character always outweighs like religious dogmatic brand for me. But yes, just me.
So I think, at least being, so say from like an Orthodox Judaism point of view, I don't really like that term Orthodox Judaism. It just helps, I guess, divide among the kind of how I guess, as Adisa said, how fundamental you are. I don't also really love that word, but I guess it kind of helps. So like in our household, in our family, and in most Orthodox households, there is definitely the teaching of dogma, but one of the things is it's really learn from my actions. So we keep kosher in the house. It means no mixing milk and meat, no eating pork, no eating shellfish. So the children learn from our actions. On Friday night, my wife lights the Shabbos candles, and so she makes that fun. So my 2 daughters want to do it with her. It's not an obligation. Like last week, my daughter wasn't in a mood. She didn't like it. So okay, fine, you didn't have to. No worries. Just whatever, hang out. You know, so Saturday morning on the Sabbath, I go to the synagogue that's, you know, next door, down the street, depending where I am. And my older daughter wants to come with me because we make it fun. You know, she gets candy or whatever a little bit after, some soda, but something, you know, to encourage it. So that's on that level. And also we really teach that you have to be a good person and you have to do things for other people, because that's what makes this world a better place. And I don't even think that's necessarily a religious thing, but that's the way we believe that will make the world a better place. So if you're doing good things for people, I can't see where that's bad.
Well, both of my daughters were, grew up with me, and they went to church when I went to church. But there was no forcing them to do anything really ever. And, you know, like some of the rest of you have said, it's more about the fact that they're wonderful, independent, smart, accomplished young women. And I don't think, you know, going to church had a huge impact on that. And neither one of them go to church now, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking to Adisa, Susan, and Jessie, Thank you so much for sharing your opinion on the topic, as well as Haley for your input. Similar to Haley, I come from a religious background, so especially my dad. My mom doesn't care as much about my religion, but my dad has always been very adamant about me staying with the Christian faith. And at this moment, he doesn't know that I don't practice religion, but I know that if he did find out, he wouldn't be happy about it. And I think because for so long he tried to put that on me, and he tried to kind of, I don't want to say force, he never forced religion on me. It was more like, well, I would really rather you would. And like, he kind of continues to push his beliefs on me in a sense, and not as much of me accepting it or like me being able to question that. It's kind of like, this is what it is. And obviously if I do have questions, I'll ask and he'll give me the answer, but it never strays away from the religion. And because of that, since I don't think religion is end all be all for everything in the world, I think it's really important for people to just remember that when they're raising their children, that they like ultimately they need to be able to go off and explore their own ideas rather than stick with the ideas that their parents have given them.
I'm really glad you shared that, Kimmy, because I'm in a very similar situation where my mom also doesn't really know that I'm like curious about what else is out there. My sister has some idea, but that's like, we're in closer age because my mom, so I'm adopted, so my mom is in her mid-60s, so there's like that differential like raising, just like mindsets, like nothing against her, nothing against me, just like different time periods of your raised. But it's really interesting you say that, because like my mom, like she always made it very clear that when I was living with her, like I always had to go to church with her, whether or not like I still believed in it. And like she knows like my older siblings and her own daughter, like older daughter, doesn't attend, and I always hear all the negative things that she has to say. So it's almost like you said, it's not really forcing, but it is a little trapping. I don't know if that's the right word, but something similar of, you don't know which way to go. Like you act one way with them and you act another way with like how you truly are. And it's very interesting. Like I'm glad we can kind of relate in that way. Like unfortunately, but at least we have that like similarity.
Yeah, no, honestly, count me into same thing with my parents. Come from a Muslim background, so that like I don't really ask too many questions about that, just because it would like really hurt them to hear stuff like that. Which does bring me to another question, would be, how would you guys react if your family member left the religion, or how would they react if you left it? And if Aaron and Nadia could answer this one first, and then open response for everybody.
Yeah, totally. So, like I said before, I was raised in a sort of Muslim household, although we really didn't practice much religion. And we kind of just celebrated some of the Muslim holidays, but like we never really took it to a very deeper level. We didn't really do prayers or anything. And we never, we didn't really do much, but we did celebrate the Muslim holidays. And they kind of just really pushed the idea that there is a higher entity, that there is some form of God, or, any other, higher entity, that there's a reason for everything. And I'm kind of like, since I'm an atheist, I didn't believe that. I never really did believe it from the start. It's just like I felt obligated to believe that. And I think like when I was 13, I kind of just like told them, like we were just having a conversation, and then like I guess I don't remember what it was about, but I did say that I don't believe in a God, and they well, my mom at least, she was really confused. She said, "So what do you believe in?" And I was just like, nothing really. I'm an atheist. I have to see it to believe it, or it has to be proven by science type of way. And she was just kind of like, I guess, confused, and she thought it was a bit weird that I didn't believe in anything, but she personally is not very religious either. I guess she just wanted me to believe in some form of God and that type of thing. But yeah, that was how my parents reacted. My dad, he is pretty cool with it. He's really open to different things. But I did feel pressured to pick a religion, even if it wasn't to be Muslim. I was still pressured to like just have some religious belief. And I did, like, you know, I was exploring a few other religions because I thought maybe I'm not Muslim, maybe I'm just, you know, maybe I'm Christian, or maybe I'm pagan. And then I just realized I didn't believe in any religion and I'm just an atheist. And yeah, that was how they reacted.
For me, as I said, like I incorporated a lot of religion into my life, just different ones. And so thankfully for my family and I, we're really like chill about it. So if someone wants to incorporate something from another religion or leave like the current religion that we're, you know, trying to learn from and maybe follow, then it's totally fine. We're really open to different ideas, thankfully. But like as in regards to my grandparents or other relatives, it's not as open at all. Like they are hardcore Christians in a way. They don't believe in God, but yet they want to celebrate the holidays, and they would hate to see if somebody from the family would leave the religion, which is weird, but it's a thing. And so I think it's really important to practice what my parents and I are practicing, is just being open to different ideas and not forcing anything on anyone and accepting each other, especially in a family. No, it can't be one way or another.
So personally, for people in my family, like I said, I come from a very heavily Catholic and Christian background. So I'm sorry, I keep saying that, but I just wanted to, yeah, so I do know that like there's a little bit of a difference between Catholicism, yes, Catholicism and Christianity. But in terms of my family that are Catholic, I know my sister also is, I believe, agnostic, if not like exploring her religion in this moment. So she doesn't really consider herself like a practicing Catholic. But even she's kind of like even my dad condemns her almost for that, because he thinks that Christianity is like the only way for you to get into heaven, since he believes in heaven. And so it's kind of with that kind of fear, I think, that like my sister doesn't want to tell him that she's no longer practicing a religion, because she's afraid that he's going to tell her something along the lines of like, you're going to hell, which I think for a lot of Christians and Catholics who have like exited out of the church, that's like their biggest, I wouldn't say their biggest fear, but for someone who's been taught that heaven is like somewhere that you want to go and hell is somewhere that you really don't want to go, it can be traumatic for people to go to their families and talk to them about leaving a religion or not sticking with the religion that they grew up with. And so I think if households were able to somehow be more inclusive in the way that they address their children and the way that they're able to explore their religions, it would be a lot more beneficial for the mental health of the children as well.
If no one has anything else to add, well, first of all, thank you for that, everybody. But we can move on to the next question, which is...
I can give my perspective. I have, so I guess two things. I guess, there is, I want to say, a stigma or maybe a stereotype, or sometimes there's no one from Orthodox Judaism. If someone leaves, the family, they'll pretend if they're dead or something, so that is not something that I actually have ever heard to be true. It's kind of like a urban legend or a myth. I know people in my wife's extended family who are less religious, more religious, maybe don't wear a beard, maybe don't keep the Sabbath. I mean, also in our immediate family, there's a whole range of how much you observe, how strictly, like, do you eat very, very kosher food, or is it maybe, kind of in the middle? Like, how reputable is the rabbi that gives the observation on it? But I think the family, there could be maybe strife in the beginning of relationships that are deteriorated, like if you become less religious. But a lot of families that I know accept their children either any way, because I mean, if you have children, this, you really love them. That just, I mean, my kids are only 2 and 2.5 and 1.5, but there's just such this love that you have for them. I couldn't see that if they said that they're not religious or something, or less religious than even I am. Okay, so what? That doesn't really matter for me. Really, the big thing is, are you still a good person? And I guess also the other way, personally, I came from the Reform movement of Judaism, which is not really, say, practicing on a daily basis. Maybe you go to the synagogue Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, versus, at least in the Hasidic movement and in the community in Brooklyn, which is very, very large. There could be 500,000 religious Jews in Brooklyn, and in the area I live here, it's you really practicing on a daily basis. So my parents definitely had that. It was a reverse. I went from being not religious to religious. And it was difficult at first, because they said, what we gave you wasn't good enough. You have to go be a super Jew. That's something like they said. But you work it out, because like I said, they're your parents, and you talk about it, and you build on the relationship. And if you don't get it, you either you don't talk about it so it doesn't upset you, or you let it go over time and build on it. Just in the beginning it was rocky with my parents, but then they really came around. In our house in Florida, where they live, they helped out. There is a kosher side of the kitchen and a non-kosher side. They built a barbecue. They bought 2 barbecues, one kosher and one. So it takes time, but if you're invested with your family, if you're invested in those personal relationships you have, then if you leave or become more religious, I don't think it really should matter, as long as you keep it respectful.
It's beautiful.
Wait, Bryn, did you want to say something?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, I thought you were like reaching for the mic or something. Okay. Thank you for that, Jessie. So I guess we could just move on to the next question, which is, how do you feel about violent or discriminatory verses? And this is not specific to a specific religion, just like in any religious holy text. And if Bo could start off answering, and then anybody else could give their input, that'd be great. And just one thing to add as well, if we could also do a verbal handshake of sorts. So when you're responding, if you could respond to what the last person said as well, that'd be nice too.
Yeah, sounds good. This is a really interesting question for me, especially from like a very non-religious background and non-religious current identity. What I feel like is really powerful for me is when people from that religion, that religious upbringing, or from that religious culture speak out against violence or negative things that are implemented by people of that religion. I think it holds a lot more weight than someone like me who's an outsider critiquing another religion for a faction or a part of that religion that is discriminatory. And so I think that's really powerful when folks are able to kind of critique their own culture or their own religious upbringing, because it just seems like it's more influential or effective in kind of continuing the conversation. And instead of there being finger pointing from the outside, it's a more meaningful conversation from the inside. So I'm fascinated to hear what other people who identify as more religious than myself might think about that.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is interesting, and it's a powerful kind of conversation. I think especially for Americans, because everybody doesn't have the freedom to even have these kind of conversations or express themselves, in these kinds of ways. You know, I grew up Christian, like I said. I converted to Islam. I am a practicing Muslim, but I work a lot in schools, like junior highs and high schools mainly, you know, recently colleges. And, you know, I think a lot of times when people have any given kind of bigotry or any even kind of like low grade, like bigotry or prejudice, it's because they don't have access to the people that they're judging, right? So a lot of times if you see somebody who doesn't like black people, how many black people do they know? You know, if you see somebody who doesn't like many Jews, how many Jews do they know? And so a lot of that has to do with exposure. In any case, I work with a lot of young kids who were from the LGBTQ plus community, and I saw how hard their lives were. You know, I saw, like high school girls who were trying to drink themselves to death at school because they were gay and their parents were Catholic, and their parents were like, you know, arguing so much that their family was splitting, and they were like, you're the reason why we're splitting, right? And so then she's really trying to drink herself to death at school, at recess. That's horrible, right? I with another heterosexual white male, we started a gay straight alliance in a junior high. You know, that was like 99% Latino, and everybody almost came from a Catholic background, and the parents were going through the roof. But we were like, look, you know, we see enough of these kids in the classrooms that they obviously need their own space, and we're just giving them space. You know, we're not, you know, anything. And so how does that relate to me and how I look at different verses and stuff like that, you know, is just simply this, like, you know, if you look in the Quran, in the Bible, in the Torah, there's all kinds of stuff that people say, yo, you know, these people should be killed for that. Those people should be stoned for that or whatever. I ain't stoning nobody, man. Like, it's not even a conversation. It's so insane to me. Like, I'm not even having a conversation about stoning somebody for anything. But what I'm saying is that I believe ultimately in my faith, you know, they say that God is the most merciful. Right. So if I'm going to do wrong in my perception of God, I want to do wrong in being an extremist in mercy. Right. If I'm going to be an extremist, I'm going to be an extremist in mercy. Right. And then Allah can hold me accountable for that and be like, what are you talking about? You should have been throwing stones. And I'd be like, sorry, bro. And that'll be what happens. But I'm not going to be someone who thinks that they know so much that they can take the life of someone else. You know, there's a small story in the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And there's a guy ironically named Usama, and he was in battle, and there was these two fighters, Usama and this other guy, kind of got away from the main group that was in the battle. And Usama had his sword out, and he was getting ready to hit him. And the guy said, oh, no. You know, I agree. There's no God but Allah. And then he was like, nah, you're just saying that so I don't kill you. And he killed him. So that was the first battle he had ever been in. So when he came back from the battle, the Prophet Muhammad was like, so what happened when you were fighting? And he said, oh, you know, this happened. And this guy said, you know, la ilaha illallah. And then, but he was just saying it. So I cut him down anyway. And the Prophet Muhammad was like, could you see into his heart? And he was like, what? He was like, could you see into his heart? Do you know that he didn't believe for sure? And he felt horrible. And he was really hurt by that. Isn't it ironic that Osama bin Laden came up and like did all this stuff named after the guy who made that same mistake, right? And so it's from that place that I don't feel capable of. I'm someone who practices nonviolence like very seriously, and so I don't believe in religious violence, period. And I think that if I'm going to be extremist, I'm going to be an extremist from a place of mercy and not from anywhere else.
Super interesting. I thank you, Lisa, for that story. That's super interesting. Yeah, like like when my approach to religion when I was younger, you know, my parents had forced me to go, but being where I'm from in California, Nadisa knows my area where I grew up in. It's like you didn't really have a lot to do. So my dad was this old veterano, you know, he's part of this gang, you know, there was Santa Samoa was on this side, it was another gang. So it was like the church was like a haven, you know, and I was the youngest kid. I played the clarinet and I was in karate, you know, and so like the church was my like safe haven, you know, and so I had so much community and love, and I still am connected with those people, right? But I mean, even though my parents didn't force me to go, I wanted to be there all the time. And I learned music there. My music minister was from the South. Him and his son, it was just us three. It was like the greatest time of my life, right? And the only problem was that church was a Pentecostal Assemblies of God church, and they took a lot of control. I felt like in like the way I thought. So it was taught to me as a young kid, like, you know, if you just think this way, you're sinning, and it was so like heavy. And I traveled the Bible Belt doing small church services and seeing those small churches where it was so manipulative, where it hurt, you know? And I had to go through my struggle through my 20s of suicidal thoughts, of like worrying about like something like a car hitting me and being like, well, now I'm not practicing religion now. You know, going through my life's journey, you know, wondering like, you know, with my own personal life, you know, whether I like men or female, whether I, you know, and it's like, but where I came from, that was all wrong, you know? And I felt like I struggled, like, where am I getting my morality from? And, you know, and it wasn't later on until I started to look at more philosophy and, you know, watch, you know, what's going into my body and be more open and approach different things with a different lens, you know? And I like a decent, I love martial arts, right? I remember back in the day, we bonded because we did jiu-jitsu at the warehouse, you know?
Yeah.
And like, that was this thing where it's like, I love the idea of like getting all these different information. When everyone was talking about like learning a lesson from here and learning a lesson from here and having that filtered and coming down, I think that's beautiful, you know? And when it comes to the old text, getting back to that question so I don't deviate too far, you know, I had to figure out like, where's my morality coming from? And I later on in my 30s, I realized like it wasn't coming from religion. What it was coming from is there's something in the air. I think Charles Dawkins said it. There's something like in the air that is, it's conversation, it's policy that's being changed. It's all of the new technology. And that right there, that thing, that's because it's complicated. Where morality comes from, we don't have the actual answer. And so I feel like religion is able to tap into that. Certain religions are able to tap into that, and you can gain knowledge from different. You can gain things. And so when I look at text, especially like Old Testament, and you know any like Abrahamic kind of religion, and I look at the old text, I mean, like there's that part of me from that Christian side I grew up in that wants to be like, fuck you guys, you like fucked me up. I had PTSD. I'm still going to therapy for this shit. Like I has some real effects on me, and I'm not gonna lie. Like I have a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to, especially the evangelical movement in the United States and abroad too. But like I had to learn, like, you know, it was the way I was approaching it, the lens I was doing, you know, because I look back in the community and just the relationships and all that stuff I learned there, you know, I mean, it was beautiful. That was beautiful.
Well, Jessie, you brought up the evangelical issue, and I deal with that every day because my sister is just a literalist when it comes to the Bible. And I mean, she reads the Bible all the time, and she quotes stuff from the Bible, and she truly believes every single word of the Bible. You know, and I tell her, well, she says to me, well, why don't you read the Bible? And I said, well, I don't read it. I try to live it, you know, and it's really gotten to the point where we cannot have any kind of a discussion about it. And we still have a relationship because she's my sister. And so we just don't talk about politics. We don't talk about religion. But I struggle to understand how people in today's time apply knowledge from so long ago as if it were happening now. I don't know.
I think I want to actually answer Susan's question or piggyback off of it. How do we apply? So I'll give, I guess, my perspective or what Judaism thinks about. So you have we'll call say the 5 books of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, right? And you look and say in Leviticus, and it says, right, if you don't keep the Sabbath, you'll get stoned, which I think Adis was referring to before, right? So at least the way Orthodox Judaism looks at it, or Judaism looks at it, is that those laws are only actually applicable when there is the temple in Jerusalem is standing, and if you have what's called the Sanhedrin, which was the Supreme Court, and this had like the 70 great rabbis, and in the Talmud or the Gemara, it tells you about what the Sanhedrin used to do, and it says in one specific place there that if the Sanhedrin put one person to death in 70 or 80 years, that was considered to be a murderous or bloody court. So you think there's wow, like it says, yeah, it's killing person for not keeping Shabbos, not doing this, not doing that. But in actuality, I mean, one person in 80 years, I mean, America puts a lot more people to death than that in a month. So that's one thing. I mean, there even went, a period of, I think, 150 years without the court murdering anyone or putting anyone to death. But along with that, Judaism at that time has I want to say the Hebrew word for it, a carbon is sacrifices. Say you inadvertently broke the Sabbath or something, so you went to the temple in Jerusalem and you brought the sacrifice, and so the rabbi. His name is the Ramban, who is a Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon of Spain from the 12th century. He said that when you brought the sacrifice, you should, it says, oh, this person really could have been killed. Well, you say this sheep or this goat or whatever you brought, that is really being killed or sacrificed in my stead. And you think about what you did and you say, thanks God for not taking me and taking this lamb. And then you give to the Kohen and to the Levite and all the charity that's supposed to be given from it. You just don't kill it and throw it away. Everyone gets to eat. Everyone is then benefits from it. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, the Torah also tells you if you see your enemy, their army on your border, you should go in and strike them first before they come and beat you up. So I do subscribe to that philosophy because, I mean, at least if you look at the Jewish people's history, we have been, persecuted many times throughout history. So in this day and age, I wouldn't stand for that, So I do. That's kind of the dichotomy for me.
Thanks for that, Jessie. I do, looking at religious texts, just kind of like how Jessie and the other Jessie, because I guess we have 2 Jessies here. But I really like the question that's being asked right now because it does remind me of, one of my first days in religion class in high school. And I'm pretty fortunate that I was able to go to a Catholic religious school, specifically in Portland, Oregon, which is quite liberal, because I remember my first day in religion class, what we were asked to do as our homework assignment was to find the most insane, weird passage that you can find in the Bible, and specifically like either the Old Testament or the New Testament for Catholics specifically, but whatever you can find, and we're going to share them the next day kind of thing. And, we all found really weird kind of like created things that sometimes we didn't even know what they meant. Like I remember the one I found was something about like boiling your baby in milk. I don't even remember. That's all I remember, which obviously no one can do anymore. I have no idea anyway, still don't know obviously. But one thing that I really enjoyed from that conversation, and again, I just remember it very vividly because it was taught by, Father Adams, which is one of the Jesuit priests at our school. And he was basically just trying to show us that a lot of times there are inconsistencies in texts, especially because we had the issue, like Sue stated before, that, it is something that was written by multiple people from forever ago at this point. And I think the thing that I really enjoyed about that lesson is that he really showed, we were taught that it's a tool for us to figure out how to align more with, the direction that we're going, or the greater good of what religion is supposed to bring us. It's a tool, and it's more than just a tool for yourself, but it's a tool that connects everyone. Meaning, there's so that, like the Bible, the Catholic Bible, there's so much that, is incorporated into Judaism. There's so much in Islam. There's, it's a tool whether you believe to choose to use it or not. So religion, if you choose to use it and that brings you closer to where you want to be, then that's great. If you don't need it, then you don't need it. But I think that a lot of that first day in religion class, and I do think they still do this at that school, it's because it's supposed to emphasize that, regardless of if you feel like you are or not, it is, you are in a community, and the religion that we're trying to teach you is about safety for your community as well. So I don't know, that completely goes against the the bloodshed that comes not only with the history of most religions, but also in the text. But I often find that's a way around it. And again, it is more interpretive, but at the same time, it's because it's a tool.
Thank you everyone for your answers. And I am actually very happy with the answers that were given, to be honest. It did make me a little bit more peaceful about the state of religion in the 21st century. But I guess this question is also related to what was just asked, is what do you guys think about groups like ISIS or Christian extremist groups? Obviously nobody agrees with their killings and stuff, but what do you think, how much of the problem is rooted in religion itself?
I want to try to answer this. This is crazy delicate. And some of this it's not, obviously, right? Like terrorism is just bonkers, right? So I don't, that's insane, killing people. In the Quran, there are things, I think, like sometimes when we look at ancient texts, like, the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah, it can be very easy to just be like, oh, those guys were so old and it was so stupid or whatever. But, it's also fair to acknowledge that there's a lot of great advice in that book. Okay. These books give a lot of great advice, baseline advice. I'm not saying follow it to the letter of everything. I'm saying baseline advice is cool. Like, for instance, I can tell you, I know a lot of families where alcoholism and drug use is a problem, right? So if you come up in Islam where you don't drink and you don't smoke and you don't do drugs, you have actually helped cure an aspect of a societal ill. Okay. In the Quran, though, it also says if you take one life, it is as if you killed all humanity. That's in the Quran. That's not a disputable verse, and it doesn't have any other interpretations. If you kill one person, Allah will see it as if you killed all humanity, right? And so you have this issue where people think because of dogmatic laws that they have the right to kill other people. I was very confused about how Muslims could kill other Muslims, like when I would see bombings in Islamic towns and stuff like that. And so there's a very interesting documentary that you can all see on YouTube that's done by the BBC, and it's called The Power of Nightmares. I never understood how Islamic fanaticism worked in this vein until I saw The Power of Nightmares. But essentially what they teach you is that the guy that kind of created the ideology in what happened is this guy, he was from Egypt, he visited Seattle, and he saw people slow dancing together. And he was like, yo, men and women slow dancing together? If that gets to where we are, the jig is up. Our whole thing is going to unspin. So when he went back to Egypt, he was like, look, the Americans are tripping. They're slow dancing and driving around in cars with no roofs together. This is not cool. And we got to be really secure about it and lock it down. So they're the people that came from that branch of Islam that ended up killing, oh man, who was the guy that used to, I'm so sorry. I'm blanking on this guy's name. But what happened is he ended up teaching this one guy, and that guy ended up teaching al-Zawahiri, who became Osama bin Laden's teacher. Okay. Bin Laden comes from this super rich family. He's like, oh, for real? I got hella money. Let's do this. And so then you have this whole thing, right? And so, religious killing is out of control. And I think what happens is, I was also at a thing at Brown University where this guy explained how terrorism and fanaticism started. When the British started divvying up the Middle East, one of the first things they did is they were afraid of Islam because they didn't understand it. So they were like, yo, we're taking all y'all books. And they're like, we can't take everything. And they're like, all right, you can keep the Quran. But by keeping the Quran, they guaranteed radicalism. They guaranteed radicalism, right? Because inside Islam, what are some of the other books? Purification of the soul, purification of the heart. These are like immensely beautiful spiritual books that talk about the spiritual diseases of the heart and how does greed, how does anger and stuff manifest in your heart, and what is the spiritual cure for that, right? So these kinds of books were all over the Middle East, and when the British came in, they took everything but the Quran, and by doing that, they almost guaranteed that there would be a radicalization, because all they were left with was the literal word, because the tradition of thinking, of expanding, of being big thinkers. Jesse earlier, he mentioned a Judaic scholar from the 12th century. There was a Muslim scholar named Imam al-Ghazali who was deeply influenced by the Greeks, and so it was this synergy of logic and spirituality. All of that stuff got erased in a lot of the Middle East, and it gave birth to a lot of the terrorism we see today. And so how Muslims begin to reintroduce themselves to purification of the heart, purification of the soul, the works of Rumi, the works of Attar, and things like that. That's going to be crucial to curing it inside of Islam. I don't know about the rest of the world. I'm just trying to explain to you what I understand through the Islamic lens.
So I don't obviously believe in that, killing anyone gets you anywhere. If anything, it kind of puts you in a negative light. So I'll demonstrate how at least the Chabad Lubavitch movement fought against the communists, from the time of the first revolution until the coming down of, or the breakup of the USSR in the early 90s, was the previous leader of our movement, the Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak, or Schneerson. His ideology was build, because everything had to be underground, but build more synagogues, more yeshivas, more seminaries, more kosher, more matzah for Passover. All of these things, basically his flow was, you can't fight darkness with a stick. You have to fight it with light. And we believe light is doing these things, like I said before, being a good person, doing unto others, but it also includes, your prayer and your charity and the learning of Torah. So the more that you spread light, because that's the way we can fight it spiritually. So we don't fight really physically. You fight it spiritually, and you can see that's he accomplished. I don't say he broke down communism, but right. They arrested him, they threw him in jail, and he just didn't stop building and spreading, and eventually communism lost, and we're still here.
Thank you for that. I just learned a lot.
Does anyone else have something to respond to Jesse, or just respond to the question in general?
I guess just sort of build off what Jesse was saying. I feel like frequently religion is used as like a sort of scapegoat for acts of violence and acts of hate, that sort of thing. I feel like most of my thoughts have already been said, much more intelligently than I could have put it. But yeah, I feel like it's, I don't know. I I don't really know what else to add to this topic, I guess. So
No, you said your point very concisely. Like, a lot of people use religion as a scapegoat, and that's true. They think religion could be used to justify their bigotry and ignorance, but that's not the case. You could still do critical thinking without using religion as the reason why you're not doing it. So yeah, your point was. Thank you for that, Karen. I guess like if.
Hi, it's Stacey. Can I say something real quick?
For sure. Go ahead.
Hey, so I feel like that to sort of build on what Curran said, that religion, and especially in the United States, I certainly can't speak for another country, but especially sort of the fundamentalist Christian religion, and even the more mainstream Christian religion, is used to oppress people who don't believe. There's monuments in different states to the Ten Commandments, for example. In God we trust is on our money. I myself was never raised with religion. And I guess I'm agnostic. I don't know that I'd go as far as to say I'm an atheist, because I don't really want to close my mind to any possibility. But I've always raised my children to say, you're a good person because that's what you want to put out in the world, and whatever happens in the end is what happens. So it's disturbing to me when I see an organized religion that's supposed to be based on the teachings of a peaceful person, and it's supposed to be, from what people say, based on love. If you look at the actual source materials, to be used really not only as an oppression of queer folks, as far as what they say, but literally in our country, there are monuments to religion, even though we say that we have a separation, and I think it's oppressive for those of us who don't believe.
110% agree with everything you just said. If no one has anything to respond to this question, I guess we could talk about the situation that's happening in France. Is everyone aware of what's going on?
No.
So just to give a very rough, broad outline of the situation, a person drew a cartoon of the Prophet in Islam, Prophet Muhammad, and what happened was some Muslims got offended by that, and a conflict ensued, which ended with the killing of the teacher. And then just racial and I guess racism and religion oftentimes are interlinked, but religious tensions are on the rise in France, and the president of France responded with doubling down on Islamic extremism, which doesn't have like a huge, I guess it wasn't a popular decision with a lot of Muslim folk. So now tensions in France are high. Not to mention they've always been high because of how just France treats their minorities there, and how France does have a lot of, I would say, Islamophobic laws, like the banning of the hijab in public spaces and etc. So if you guys would like to discuss that, that'd be a topic I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are
on. I'll talk because I feel like the resident Muslim kind of just because I'm next to you. So yeah, I mean, France has had a long history of being oppressive to North Africans in general, and Muslims, in very kind of quiet ways. I mean, I guess we kind of define it as microaggressions, and over the last decade or so, they have been hugely picking up steam, as it were. In Islam, like the drawing, not just of Prophet Muhammad, but any prophet is really forbidden. It's really a forbidden thing. So like when you go into a church and you see like a portrait of Jesus or Moses or angels kicking it in heaven, that is not the vibe in Islam. That is not the vibe. Because we see God as like a formless thing, and we see that, these drawings can be weaponized, right? Like if you read the Bible, it says that Jesus had hair, feet of burnished brass and hair of lamb's wool. That is not a blue-eyed white guy with shoulder-length blonde hair. You know what I'm saying? So that creates, and that's why it was created, right? Like we don't want people to start doing stuff like that, and that's why it happens. Now, speaking about not having a veil in Islam, can you imagine if America said Jews could not wear a yarmulke? What would happen? What would happen? The streets would be filled with all kinds of people, including me, rightly, because that's an oppressive thing. To say that an Islamic woman of faith cannot wear what her religion, suggests she wear, that's oppressive, right? And so that creates a bad situation. Now we get to the thing where there's a group of people who are very kind of provoking towards the Islamic faith, and they've made these caricatures of the Prophet Muhammad. I think it's horrible that the guy went in there and killed him, but I also think that it's horrible to deliberately provoke somebody in a way that is disrespectful to their faith. I would never dishonor a Christian, a Jewish person, a Buddhist person by doing exactly what I know they would prefer I not do, right? And so the main Muslim that I listen to in America, his name is Hamza Yusuf. Hamza Yusuf. And he gave this amazing talk one day, and he was talking about, and he didn't come up with the idea, but he was expanding on it, this idea that, in America, everyone talks about rights, but no one talks about responsibilities. Okay. I have a responsibility as an American. I think that it is the most American thing to do to let everybody be as they are. That's what I think as an American. I remember one day I was going down the street. I saw these two like super country type dudes. They were giving each other tattoos to country music. And as they were doing that, the very next house, this Sikh family was coming out of the house. They're like, hey, what's up? Hey, and then there's like all kinds of country music playing. This family's getting ready to go, to their temple. There was no problem. And here I am walking by a black Muslim. I was like, yo, that's super American. Like, this is a crazy American moment. Where else are you going to have a black guy walking a dog who's Muslim, country guys giving each other tattoos, listening to country music while the Sikh family comes outside? That's America. That's America. And so I believe in this freedom, like an ultimate freedom. And so it's in that freedom that I also feel the responsibility, right, to not look at the Sikh family and go, oh, you guys don't believe in Islam, so I'm going to, what God do you guys think is sacred? Okay, let me try to break that altar or whatever. That's not what you're supposed to do. So I think that in this idea of rights, we have to keep in tune the cultural responsibility to not deliberately offend somebody else. If we don't agree, we don't agree. But when you're drawing a caricature of my prophet and you know that people in my faith are going to take deep offense to that, I mean, like, I don't want someone to run up. I'm also a journalist. I've been a journalist for half my life. So I don't like to see journalists get killed. And I believe ultimately in freedom of speech. I believe ultimately in freedom of the press. But when you do that, I mean, look, if I went out of my way to offend Jews night and day, I wouldn't be shocked if someone knocked on my door and tried to give me the business. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. You just like go ask for trouble. Like, what do you expect? To kind of check, in place. I had to read up on it, because I wasn't too certain. I thought we were, because I know that we have civil unrest is going on right now, because of Article 24 or whatever they're passing. But yeah, so I had to look it up, and like it is scary. It's scary. It's like it's kind of like what he called it Islamic separatism. It's basically like if you're not with the core values of being French, then with this new law, they're going to be banning homeschooling. They are also going to shut down. The government has the power to shut down mosques.
It's going to make stuff more radical, man. I'm sorry.
Muslim associations that promote any message that is not the core value of France. And even though France has been a very big proponent of every religion has its own equal kind of a thing, this is not it, And it's like you have a lot of people, conflating like Islamic, like radicalism with Islam, and it's it just feels like the prime minister is kind of it's like he's saying, like, if you're Muslim, it's almost implying that you're inherently raised in like terrorism.
Yep.
And you're not secular. And it's bullshit. And I love what you said. You said, like, yeah, like that's the one thing I did love about growing up in the Bay.
Yeah, the diversity. It's fantastic, and I don't have the space to be, again, anything but a mercy extremist.
So it's a difficult one, right? Because I don't think the guy should have been disrespectful, but I was always taught that 2 wrongs don't make a right. I would have said that it would be bigger upon the people who committed the atrocity to have withheld their violence and said, no, I'm bigger than you, and my religion teaches me different or teaches me peace, so I'm going to actually take the high road.
Mm-hmm.
And, maybe I'll come and say you did it wrong, but I'm not going to, whatever. Look, to bring in a little bit of American law, right? The Constitution, you have the 8th Amendment, cruel and unusual punishment. Maybe the guy did really deserve some sort of a punishment, whatever. Maybe he could have written an apology or, went to sit down with the chief imam of France or something and had a conversation so he can learn from his wrong and make a sincere apology or something. But I don't know if you deserve to lose your life over a drawing. That's
no question. I agree with you.
But just another thing is, like, I don't know, like, look, you see in the media all the time drawings and stuff with the Jew with the hook nose or the hat or the mariachi something. I don't know. I never thought I was going to go, kill the journalist over it. I just never was stirred to those type of feelings because I feel you see it a lot. You see it all the time in the media, just things they even transpose into other things. They had, the guy with the fingers the other day on some, I don't know if it was a Trump or a Biden thing below, but that's, if you're versed in these type of subliminal caricatures, then it was right there hitting you in the face that they were saying the Jews control whoever's behind it. Whatever, okay, it happens. Everyone thinks the Jews run the world. Like, okay, fine. Like, I'm not going to beat you up over it.
No, I think that's real. Yeah, no. I think that's right, and I think the only thing that people need to be aware of is that in any faith, there are going to be hardcore extremists who are down to do stuff, and so I feel like by the president and the government agencies not highlighting the role of responsibility over rights, it's like you're provoking Muslims in the same space of free speech. You're denying them a voice to even combat it. And so they start to feel, if they're already remotely, I don't even want to say extremists, but if they're very conservative, right? Like, I'm Muslim. I already know if you say certain things, there's going to be certain dudes who are probably going to come to your door. I know that. And if you do it enough in America over Christianity, people will come to your door. This is, you know what I mean? And this is something that I wish didn't exist in the space of religion, but it does. And that's where, responsibility comes in. And that's where, again, you have the right. Okay, you want to draw a picture of the Prophet Muhammad? Go ahead. But don't trip. You know what I mean? Like, you got to know how we get down on this side. And that's it. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have free speech or whatever. I believe it wholeheartedly. Again, I'm a journalist, but I would never knowingly provoke and dishonor someone's religion in the name of rights. I think it's a cowardly thing to do.
You shouldn't do it just because you can. I always, I'll have an argument with persons, because living in the South for a long time, people are, pretty conservative and evangelical about flag burning.
Mm-hmm.
I think you should be, it's a right. Yeah, sure. Do it. You should have the right to do it. But would I ever do it?
Exactly. Same.
Thank you guys for your input. That was the last question we had for today, and we will be going with closing statements. I'll start and then hand everything over to Nadia. And I would just like to say this was an amazing conversation. It did really bring me, I would say, like peace, knowing that there's so many people from different beliefs and different religious affiliations, but we can have a civil conversation about this. And one thing that did really stand out was when Jessie and Adisa were talking about how, like, just past school of thoughts in religion. And I think it's very important for like, I guess, to show people that critical thinking and religion could exist side by side, and you don't need to follow everything you listen to, and you could do some thinking on your own. And hopefully the more people understand that, the better the world would be. Nadia.
Yes, I totally agree, Omar. I'm really thankful that you guys all came to this. It was very interesting to listen to every and each one of you. It was amazing to learn about everything that you guys have been talking about. I hope I contributed to the conversation also. You know, you learned maybe something, I don't know, from me. But I just want to emphasize that I think what I've learned from today's conversation is that it's really important to just be open-minded, like everywhere, and always think everything over and be kind. Religion shouldn't be an excuse for violence. Nothing should be an excuse for violence. And we just need to stay true to ourselves and be kind. Susan, would you like to go next?
Sure. Well, I appreciate you including me in this discussion. I am by far the oldest person here, so I don't get a chance to interact so much with younger people. And I really appreciated hearing your viewpoints, particularly Adisa and Jessie, because where I live, in my neighborhood, in my circle of friends, I just don't come in contact with younger people or people of different faiths. And I really appreciated hearing your views on things.
Thank you so much. Adisa?
I was grateful to be a part of this. I'm happy to, have these kinds of cultural exchanges with as many people as possible. I think it's really important. I think, for America, especially for young people, like, you need to really understand how much we've gotten it wrong. You know what I'm saying? There's some things that Americans have done right. There's the things that your parents' generation and their parents did right. But like this issue around like religious violence and like dogmatic related kind of violence, it's really horrible. Right. And so, I am inspired when I see all of you, when I hear you, when I can feel your frustration and your sadness around, what these problems are doing in your households and in your local community. So I hope that, in time, that you can, I think somewhere in the Constitution, it says that, the idea is to create a more perfect union, which means that they knew it wasn't exactly how it needed to be when they put it together, as good as it might have been, right? So, take your school time, take your free time to do as much as you can to not just be open-minded, but understand others. And please seek to aspire to be a nonviolent extremist. That's what's going to make America step forward and be a leader. We've got to find a way to be a nonviolent extremist, irrespective of whatever. Okay. But thank you all.
Thank you so much, Adisa. Bryn, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you everyone for participating in this and just for sharing ideas. I feel like I learned so much from it. I wish that, we could all sit down and have more conversations with this. But I definitely, with our communities and people outside of our communities, I definitely think that I picked up and learned a lot of tools and how to initiate these conversations. So again, thank you everyone.
Thank you. Jessie K.
I want to say thanks to my old friend, good friend Claire from law school for inviting me to this and thinking of me. I really appreciate it. It's nice to meet all of you. What I think is important, and what a lot of people can learn from having dialogues like this, is it can strengthen your own beliefs or help concrete what you believe by hearing other people's, because oh that resonates with me, I disagree, and you're open to new things where you might not have been exposed to it. So I think something like this is really good and good to the wider community to share people's beliefs, and just continue to be good people and do good things.
Thank you so much for this. Another Jessie.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being a part of it. I love these conversations. I love the topic of religion and all this, and I find this encouraging. So thank you everybody for being vulnerable and sharing, because I do get times when I get caught up in snares when it comes to my own faith and the way I approach my place in the universe and all these things. And when I'm not tethered to religion like how I used to be, I feel like I'm floating out here. And when these conversations are nice, because it just kind of reminds me that it could ground me. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jessie. Bo?
Yeah, thank you. I'm extremely blown away by this conversation. I knew going in, given the topic at hand, that I would maybe take more of a back seat and listen and learn from other folks. And I feel like I'm coming away from like a bunch of mini TED Talks or like a conference, and I've just learned so much and heard so many great perspectives. And I really appreciate everyone, like Jessie said, being very vulnerable and being comfortable, giving us all insight, because I think, like Susan said, I find myself sort of in a bubble with folks who may have walked away from religion or don't have a strong religious affiliation. And so it's really refreshing to hear from various perspectives here. And I'm coming away with a lot of good food for thought. And I especially love the saying of being an extremist in mercy. I'm definitely going to be thinking more about that as we walk away from this tonight. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Bo. Curran?
Yeah, this is a really interesting experience. Sort of like Bo was saying, I don't really know much about like religion or the things that sort of follow with that either. So I also was probably just going to be taking more of a backseat. But there's one thought that I had that was sort of reinforced from hearing this conversation, that it's easier to be respectful than to go out of your way to make some joke to offend someone else, which you shouldn't do. It's the basic human knowledge. But there were various things that I thought were really interesting to hear. I think Jessie, you said this. It's easier, or you can't fight darkness with a stick. You fight it with light. I think you said that. I have a bad memory. Sorry.
That was right. You got it.
Yeah. But it was really interesting. And I also just want to say, Adisa and Jessie, I feel like you guys really were well spoken and put out a lot of good ideas and perspectives that I'm definitely going to be thinking on and thinking about. Overall, this was I think this was a very interesting experience. Yeah.